All right, I'm gonna start up. If you have not heard this already, supposedly tomorrow we're gonna have freezing rain all day. So, kind of in advance of that happening, what happened was the school sent out an email today, and I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna give you this. But it said, as a reminder, we will communicate the weather notification for you in the following ways. If you have not gone out to this website that you see up on top, http://www.e2campus.com/my/rankin/signup.htm, not HTML, HTM. If you go out to that site, all right, I'll bring it right back, so don't worry if you're typing it in. You'll get this. This has you sign up for their emergency alert system. And what it'll do is if you sign up for it, they will automatically send you texts if, let's say that there would be, the weather situation, or if for some reason, the power goes out at the school or whatever. All right? So you really should sign up for that. Now, some people are like, fine, but I don't want to. Okay? If you don't want to, you don't want to. I mean, I wouldn't try to force you. The school wouldn't try to force you. But if you do that, then if you decide that you're not going to sign up for it, please look up on the screen here, because if you go out to the main page out on Inside Rankin, there will be a thing in here. I gotta go back to, let's see. Go back. Under announcements or something, but it'll be on this right-hand side. It'll be out there tomorrow, if indeed they do decide to close campus. All right? If you forget to do that, and you're like, well, he told us a bunch of stuff, but I really wasn't paying any attention, bless you, then you could always just go out to rankin.edu, and they should have a message on the main page if they decide. Now, I asked Charles, I said, listen, I usually get in here at 5:15, and Don, our vice president, mentioned that they don't typically close classes until 5:30. That is not really true. He makes the decision. He does not drive out here. What they have is here, and in St. Louis and in Perryville, they have what are called spotters. So they have somebody who's got, basically, who checks out on the weather and gets back to him. I mean, he does the St. Louis spotting, I would guess, because he drives into that campus every day. But those people will get a hold of him, and in the past, it's been bad because they haven't had these spotters. So when there have been problems here, but not in St. Louis didn't know about it. And I don't know if you remember, but when we had that ice storm a few weeks back, what happened was Ryan, who is in the class right after me, his students, I guess, were having a hell of a time getting out of here. That literally the parking lot was that bad. They don't want to do that. So again, long story short, sign up if you haven't signed up. Check the website tomorrow. All right? I'd hate to see somebody driving out here when they decided to close the campus. It's supposed to start early tomorrow, and actually it may start real late tonight after midnight. Depends on what weather or what channel you listen to, for lack of better words. All right? All right, so that said, a couple more things. First, I sent everybody an email this morning, and then I forgot part of it, so I sent you 2 emails. The first one says, good morning, please see the 2 articles which we will be reviewing at the beginning of class. Also shown below is the program prologue. Everybody see this right here up on the screen, this thing that I've got in dark blue now? We're going to be writing 2 programs this morning, all right? And I'd like you to put that at the beginning of each program. And as we go on, and we're going to keep adding to this payroll program, I've already got about 7 iterations written, all right? But I'd like you to keep that there, and then we'll just keep adding to the prologue, all right? So the other thing, I got sent this morning, and I thought it was a pretty good article. It's called What .NET Developers Ought to Know to Start in 2017. And it's got all sorts of stuff about what .NET is. I'm not going to read a lick of it to you, but if you go down towards the bottom under the need to know, there's a bunch of stuff that's out here. So you might find that it's worth your while to spend 5 or 10 minutes and look through it. If you look through it and you go, not for me, okay. All right, so that's the first one. The second one that I sent you, it's called Chrome is the most popular, just because I've been touting this and I want you to all see it. There are 3 different things that are in here. This is the smallest one for Chrome. All right? Most of the other ones say that over 50% of all users now are using Chrome. All right? And depending on which survey you read, IE is either in second or in third, and Safari is either in second or in third. One of the main reasons for Safari, if you don't know this, is Safari comes as the standard operating system on anything Apple. And that's one of the reasons that they're so big. But you can still add another browser if you want to. What I'm amazed at is the fact that for years I used Firefox, and their market share just seems like it just continues to fall. And going along with that, Edge was going to be, Microsoft's latest and greatest new browser. I don't think it's really catching on the way they thought it would. All right? So just so you see those. All right. The second thing, I went back and resent this to you. Now, you might be interested in this. You might not. Colin, I don't believe you've heard about this before. But I asked the class last semester if they'd be interested in having a class during the summer. It wouldn't be part of the program, but it would just be another class that people could take. And there was at least some interest. I said, well, what would you be interested in? And we talked about it a little bit. And one of the things that was thrown out there was Python, the Python programming language. I got sent this maybe a week or so back. But if you click on this link, which I sent you, if you want to, and you don't have to do this, but you can enroll for a free Python class online. All right, it's totally free. The guy who teaches it, the guy you see right there, I can't remember his name. Oh, there it is, Dr. Chuck. Of course that's his name. But he's from the University of Michigan. All right, and he also has a book that's several hundred pages that he puts in there, and he puts links to it. So if you're interested in that, that's another thing you can look at. If you say, not interested, okay. All right, I'd rather just give you a bunch of stuff and let you sift through it, see what you want and what you don't want, rather than give you nothing. All right, so that said, I'm going to close this, close, close that too. Take attendance right in front of you so you can see what I have to do every morning. I don't see Brady right now, do I? Nope. So he looks like he's going to be absent. All right, and I'll save that. If he comes in later, I might have to change it to tardy. We'll see. All right, so that's done. So what I'd like everyone to do is to please start up Visual Studio right now. Don't go any further, please, but just start up Visual Studio. So when you get right here, just please stop. Again, as we go through this stuff, and you'll find this more and more, I'm going to expect that when we go through something, if you don't ask questions, that you understand it. I can't say that to you too many times. Now, some of you I know are kind of hesitant to ask questions. Maybe you email me before class or after class, and that's fine. I'll try to get back to you if you email me as soon as I possibly can. All right? If you emailed me last night, and I think, you may have, all right, literally I decided I was a little tired, so I laid down and I woke up and it was time to go to bed. All right? So, but normally I'm on every night. Okay? And, going back to that, one of the things, or what he asked me was, hopefully it's okay that I'm saying this, that it had dropped his test, even though I put it in there. What Rankin does in their system is they automatically drop your low test. You've only taken one, so guess which one they drop? It's not technically dropped. Your grade is in there. So everyone who took the test yesterday, and yours will be in there in just a bit, but everyone who took the test yesterday, all right, your grades are all in there. Your grades should be in there. Charles said, how'd your first test go? And I said, hey, everybody got a B or above, which made me feel good. All right? So, what I'd recommend you do right now, and you don't have to do this, but what I'd recommend you do right now is I had asked people to create a folder that's called C#. All right, and that's where I've been putting my stuff, and that's probably where you've been putting your stuff if you created that. If you didn't create one, okay. You can keep throwing everything on your desktop if you want. But I've seen some of your desktops, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. All right, maybe you can do that, and you can have 100 things out there. My friend Doug, I couldn't believe you could put that many icons on a desktop. But he was the kind of guy, he would do that, and so his whole thing would be filled up. You could say, oh, you want that? And he'd know right where to go to. I had a friend like him, Rich. The guy, it was funny because he was one of the guys that I reported to at AT&T when I worked there. He would have literally a stack of papers on his desk this high, and I'm not exaggerating. And I'd say, Rich, I need this. And he'd go, oh, it's over here. He'd go in the middle of it, and he knew right where it was. Now, some people are like that they're very meticulous. They've got their own way of doing things. But I'd recommend you do this. If you've done that, I'm going to open mine up, and I'm going to create another folder inside of there that I'm just going to call payroll. Because that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to create 2 payroll programs. I'm going to throw all the payroll programs that I create into that folder called payroll. Again, if you want to do that, fine. If you don't want to do that, fine. Question got asked this morning, and again, I want to make sure people know this, that 2 or 3 of you have already turned in the Chapter 1 homework. Great. But what I want you to do, ideally, because it'll make it easier for me when I'm grading, is to bundle together everything you do for Chapter 1, put it in a folder, call it something like Chapter 1, zip the folder, and email it to me. Again, I can handle emails up to 10 meg each. And I don't believe that's going to be a problem because we're going to do very little work in here with anything graphical. All right? Okay, so I've got that payroll folder. So I'm back into Visual Studio. And again, I can either, from here I can click New Project, but I just, for whatever reason, never started doing it that way. So I always close this and I do a File, New Project. But whichever way you're more comfortable doing that, please get to this screen right here when you do File, New Project, and then please stop. Now, if you've already gone further than that, then I can't really, that's fine. But we're going to first create the console app. Yes. What's that?
The board wigged out. It's all messed up here.
The board wigged out.
If you see the bottom part where it says console application.
Oh, right here you mean, yeah. Okay, that's interesting because it is like that on my, oh, there it just came back. That's where it should be, so, all right. So for the first one that we create, and first of all, if you've not done this before, by default, hopefully yours says Visual C#. That's what all of yours, that's the one that should be highlighted. If for some reason it's Visual Basic, and I used to teach that, then change it to Visual C#, okay? Typically after you've changed it once, there's not a problem, all right? Please look up on the screen here too. By default, you should get this. If you don't get it for some reason, you may have to click up here and work your way down and take a look through it, go to Windows or whatever, and then Classic Desktop. But typically you don't have to do that. If you just go to Visual C#, you've got this. Is there anyone who doesn't have that showing right now? I just want to make sure because I don't want to assume anything. All right, so if we create GUI apps here, you will choose the top one, Windows Forms application. But what we want to do is choose the third one down, which is console application. So choose that, but don't click OK yet. Because unless you change the name, it's going to say Console Application 1, which isn't what we want. All right? Plus, where it's being stored here isn't what we want. So I'm going to change the name of this. I'm just going to call it Payroll Console. 2 words, no blank spaces between them. Payroll Console. All right, and since I added a new folder over here that's called Payroll, I'm going to go and add that as well. All right, does what I've just explained make sense to everyone? What I'm going to end up doing is each time we make a new iteration of this payroll program, I'm going to go and copy the one that I have that's working, and I'm going to copy the folder and start with that copy. Does that make sense? So I don't have to go back and redo anything. So we're going to do the GUI one first. I'm sorry, the non-GUI one first. So payroll console and click OK. Now, a thing to remember, I've said this before, but I want to make sure people understand this. All right? When you are working with a console program like this, the properties window doesn't do anything. There are no properties because it's non-GUI. So I could close this. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that. You don't have to do anything, okay? But this properties window will be important when we do the GUI one, which we're going to do next, all right? Now, I've mentioned this before, but I want to say it to you again. Notice that right now, you don't have to do this yet, but if I write in here, right line, you don't have to do this. I'm going to remove this in just a second. But if I write that, I get an error message. The error here says, the name right line does not exist in the current context. Well, if you ever get that, again, we mentioned this in class yesterday, but you go up to the top, you can put this anywhere, but I'm going to put it at the very top. So I'm going to open up a new line here, and I'm going to type in using static system.console, and this is case sensitive. So I put in that new first line. You can see the word using. The word using is a keyword because it's in kind of a medium blue. The word static is a keyword because it's in medium blue. So from the system class, we're using the console class. All right? And that's the way that you've got to do it. So notice if you look on the screen now if I type in right line and I put in hello, I don't get the error message. Now, if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, so if you don't want to do that, okay, if I go and comment that out, for example, you can come in and type in console.WriteLine, and you can do that because we're already using system. So we don't have to type in system.console.WriteLine, but you can type in that as well. I figure you do enough typing in here anyway, okay? So I'm going to always start my programs by having that in there so I can just do this. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, it's just a shortcut. It's not buying you really anything other than it's a shortcut. All right? Now, so I'm going to get rid of that line. And as I told you earlier, I'm going to go back, and of course I closed it. I'm going to go back to the mail that I sent you this morning. And in the mail that I sent you this morning, in the first email was this thing, which is known as a program prologue. This will be a C# payroll program, at least to start. It will be written as both a console application and a graphical user interface or GUI application. For program iteration number 1, the user will be prompted for his or her name, hours worked, and hourly pay rate. From there, the program will calculate the gross pay amount and as hours worked times hourly pay rate. Finally, all of the inputted and calculated values will be displayed. There is no error checking in this program. We will be adding the error checking in later programs. There is nothing that accounts for overtime. Later, when we get into chapters 9 and 10, we'll have different kinds of employees, so we can handle them differently. We might have an hourly employee versus a commission employee. Does that make sense? But that's stuff that we'll get to later on in the semester. So it's easy to break this program, and as mentioned, we will add additional functionality as we go on. So I highlighted all that. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to go back into Visual Studio, and that's a prologue, and I'm going to put it up at the top of the page. All right, so I've got that up there. Now, do you have to do that? No. I think it's a good thing to always start when you're working on a new program to at least put something up there. Not everybody agrees with that. But I will tell you that if you're starting to work on a program, I don't care if it's for the test or what it's for, if you start working on it and you're having trouble, at least putting something up on the screen. And I'm not being funny here. It's kind of an emotional victory. Because at least you've got to start, regardless of what it is that you're going to be putting up there. It doesn't really matter. But it gets you started. It might get your mind thinking or whatever. All right. Oops. I like to see all of it while I'm working on it. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. I could have changed the font size, but I like doing it like that. So I've got all that stuff in here. So right now I can run this, but it's not going to do a flaming thing. Because all I put in there was a comment. All right? So as we get started here, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put a comment in here that says, declare and initialize program variables. Again, you don't have to do that. All right, but I'm doing it. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variables that I'm putting into this program. So every time I create a new variable, I'm going to create it, I'm going to give it an initial value, and I'm going to put a small comment there explaining what it is. All right, so I've got string fname equals the empty string, and I'm just going to say first name. I'm going to put all 6 of these in. You notice when you look here that for each one of these lines I've put in, they've got the green squigglies. If you can see something like that in green, it means it's a warning. The reason that that's important is what that means is the program will compile. But as far as the system is concerned, there are things that you have got in there that could potentially lead to errors. I'm getting all those because of the fact that I've declared 6 variables and I'm not using them in the program yet. That's what we're going to put in right now. Any questions on what any of those variables mean? So I'm going to have the user next enter their first name, then I'm going to have them enter their last name, then I'm going to have them enter their hours worked, then I'm going to have them enter their hourly rate, then I'm going to multiply the hours times the rate, and that will give me the gross. Then I'm going to combine all of that information, their first name, their last name, their hours, their rate, and their gross. I'm going to put that into the variable called total, then I'm going to print it out. All that makes sense? Double just means that it's a number that can have a decimal place. Any other questions? Does all that make sense? Hopefully, even if you're not the most fleet of typists, you've got all that in. Because, now the good news is, if you're a slow typist, okay, you notice I typed all those. Well, I've got 3 strings. So if you're a slow typist, it may have been faster for you to put that first one in, copy it to the clipboard, and paste it in twice. See what I'm saying? Anything you can do to save yourself a little bit of time. All right, so again, no questions? All right, so I'm going to put another comment here that says input name, hours, and rate info. Now, as you get going with this, you'll probably write less of these types of comments. I'm just putting them in there so you have an idea as far as what we're about to do next. We are now going to put in a right followed by a read line, then a right followed by a read line, then a right followed by a read line, then a right followed by a read line. Okay? Because we're going to read in this and this, this, then this, then this, then this. And again, we're going to do the same thing 4 times. I'd recommend you type in the first one and then copy it 3 times and make the changes. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say this. Right. Enter first name. F name equals read line. All right. Then I'm going to copy this 3 times. I'll make my changes in just a minute. All right. So it's in there right now. If I ran the program, it would say enter first name 4 times. Not what I want. All right. But I can immediately change this from first to last and then make that L name. So why don't you just get this done that's in the blue right here, and then we'll talk about what we've done up until this point. After we get these lines in, we literally have about 5 or 6 more lines and the program's finished. We're going to have to change those other 2 write statements and the read line that are down below, but we'll get those in a minute. I just want people, if nothing else, to type in what's in blue right now. Right? Looks as though everybody just has got it in or just about in. Let's talk about what's going on here. All right. First of all, I've got the word right there. Somebody tell me what's the difference between right and right line? What's that?
That's your cursor.
It's where your cursor is. With right, and that's why I put a blank space here. With right, what's going to happen is it's going to say enter first name on the screen, and then my cursor is going to be blinking, but on the same line. If you're going to prompt somebody for some information, it's typically nice to put the cursor on the same line. You don't have to do that, but it typically makes it a little easier. They can tell exactly what's going with what. So we're going to ask them to enter their first name. Then we're going to read in whatever you put in there, and we're going to assign it to F name. Does that make sense? Remember, single equals is assignment. All right? Then we're doing the same thing with the last name. So out of the inputs that we have, we've now handled these 2. But we still have to handle, these 2. Now notice the difference between F name, L name, as opposed to hours and rate. F name and L name are both strings. That's why we could put this read line in here without having to do anything special. Because read line assumes that what you're entering is a string. But when we get to putting in the input for our hours and our rate, they're not strings. So the reason I'm telling you that is please look up on the screen. You can type it in a second, but please first, just for now, look on the screen because this is going to make an error. So when I come in here and put this hours, I'm going to get an error. Yeah, make me a layer. There we go. And I'm going to get an error because it says that's a string. You're trying to assign a string to a double. It does not understand what you're attempting to do. What you're attempting to do is illegal. It's breaking C# syntax. So what you have to do you look up on the screen here, is you have to say convert dot to double, and then put the whole read line, all of it, into parentheses, like that. Notice now how everything has gone away. All right? And I'm going to grab that line right there, and I'm going to copy it down to here. And then change this to hourly rate. And this will now become rate. All right, so these are the next two lines that are in blue there that you should now be putting in or adding to your program. So go ahead and put those in. And in case you're fast, I'll even give you the next line. All right, so please put in all of the stuff that you see in blue. And after we get done with this, I have what I typed in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more lines, program's finished. It's a good time after you finish that to either do a file, save all, or to click the double disk icon that you have up there. You should just get used to saving. As we go on and we get further on in the spring semester, one thing I know from talking to my daughter is that the weather around here in spring especially can get funky in a hurry. All right? And what I hate to see happen is you working on this, what will happen is there is an auto save that's in here. So the system will save, and I think you can even play with it to see how often it auto saves. All right? But I'd hate to have somebody working on something and then lose a bunch of their work because we had a power hit. All right, I'm hoping everybody got a chance to key that in. Please, if you would, look up on the screen here. All right? Now, I don't want you to do this yet, but if I run this, it's going to come up and it says enter first name, enter last name, enter hours worked, enter hourly rate, and then it just stops. But you can see that all of that stuff right now worked, correct? Yes.
There's no checks for it, so you could put pretty much anything
Yes,
you wanted.
but if I come in here, the question was, are there any checks? And if I put in Jeff and I put in Scott and I said, I don't know, it's going to immediately break because it's expecting you to put in a number and you put in something non-numeric.
I guess you can do
All right.
the same for the name.
Yes. No, the name will take anything because it's just a string.
Okay.
So I can leave it blank. I can put in this. Now, if I come through here and I see I'm making, I worked, let's just say I worked 80 hours, but I accidentally put in there minus 10, it took it. But according to them now, I owe them $800. All right? But what I'm saying is we will put that stuff in later programs. All right? And I think it's the next chapter we'll already talk about the if statement, so you'll see how to use that. All right? And again, I'm going from the guys that either you didn't retain a lot from the JavaScript or you weren't in the JavaScript class. So that's why we're taking it very slow like this. All right? So we've inputted our first value, which was our first name. We've inputted our second value, which was the last name. We've now inputted our third value, which is the hours worked. We've inputted the hourly rate, and we figured out the gross. But we haven't told it to do anything with this. That makes sense? Now, we could do this in a bunch of ways, just so you know. What I did was I said, let's just make this string. Notice how this is the only thing that still has the squigglies? And I decided to take this string called total and just put everything into one big string. You don't have to do that. But that's the way I decided to do it. All right? So like I said, the next 4 lines that we have in here are going to be adding to this total string. Okay? So that's the next 4 lines. So I'm going to say total equals, what is that \n doing? What does n stand for? The answer is new line. It's like you hit your enter key. Okay? So I want to make sure that I have a blank line in there when I start doing that. So I'm going to say name. Please look up on the screen. Even if you're typing, just stop for a second. Plus fname. Plus, I'm going to put this on 2 lines. You don't have to, but I'm going to run out of room otherwise. Now, please look up on the screen here. You should now be able to get to the point where you're able to figure out what this means. This means this string is going to say name, colon, blank space, then it's going to put whatever I typed in there for the first name. Then it's going to put another blank space and whatever I typed in for the, that was the first name, this is the last name, and then a new line. Does that make sense? Because it should. Because otherwise I would run the first name and last name together. This way they're just going to have, it'll be Jeff space Scott instead of Jeff Scott. Here?
Yeah. So you're putting Jeff space and then you're going to go down.
And then I'm going to put Scott. You can put all this on 1 line. I'm just going to run out of room. So you can put all this on 1 line if you want to. I just didn't want it to scroll off the screen. Here. If you're still confused, you don't have to type this in yet, but I'm going to type in read line right here. All right? So you don't have to do this because this is what we're going to get to later. But I'm going to put in here write line. Again, you don't have to do this. And I'm going to put in total because I want to show you what I've done so far. And if you still have a question, maybe hopefully that'll answer it. So I run the program. Jeff, Scott, 40, 10. So that's what it gave me. Does that make sense? Okay, then that's fine. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So you can see, so far, looks good. So that's the first thing. But I want to keep adding to this total string. Okay, in fact, I should have really put a comment here that said calculate gross pay. And I'll put here format output. Okay? So that's what I've got so far, but now I want to go in and I want to add, I want to put in my hours, and I want to put in my rate, and I want to put in my gross. Does all that make sense? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say total plus equal. Anybody remember what that stands for? Total plus equal, what was that called? The add and assign to operator. Remember that? So that's what we're doing, and we're going to put in here hours, again a blank space, plus hours dot toString. And we'll go over what all this means in just a second. Hopefully I can get all that. Yeah, good. It didn't run off the screen. Go ahead and put that in. In fact, I'll do this too. I'll just leave it right there. I'll have you put that in, and then we'll stop. Again, we have 4 more lines to type in, and then we're done. If you've already typed in these 2 lines at the bottom, then you only have 2 more lines to type in, and we're done. All right. Again, this is a very simplistic program that allows, it's an interactive program in that it allows the user to enter in 4 values. Then based on 2 of those 4 values, it creates another new value, and then it prints out all 5 values. All right? So please look up on the screen here. Even if you're still typing, I'll come right back to it. But I'm going to run this again. Jeff, Scott, 40, 10. Now it's got my hours in there also. Now, if you are an incredibly anal person, and I'm semi-anal, but if you're an incredibly anal person, you can keep putting /T's and stuff in here to try to really line it up perfectly. I'm not that concerned with that. That looks fine as far as I'm concerned. But to go back again to what Drew had asked about, if I come through here now and I do put in, now if I put in, something really weird, see, it still has that because we're not doing any error checking. We will do error checking in later programs. Sometimes when you talk about error checking, sometimes it is literally referred to as bulletproofing your program. So we will be bulletproofing the program. All right? I'm not worried about that right now. I'm more worried that we just start with this, all right, and hopefully it's making sense to everyone. All right, so we've now printed out that. The next thing I want to add to this is I want to add the rate. Please look up on the screen though. If you'd stop for just a second and look up here. For the rate, I want the rate to have a $sign in it. I could manually put that in. That's too much work. So I'm going to come in this toString. I'm going to put in here $C, which means that I want it formatted for currency. And in fact, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to put in here gross. And guess what? That's the whole program right there. So I'll give you a couple minutes to put that in, talk about it for a second or two more, and then we're going to go on to our GUI example. Again, make sure when you get done, it's always a good idea to do a save all, and please look up on the screen and notice the difference. Now, Jeff, Scott, 40, 10, there's my output. And the last two fields were both done in currency format, so you can see with the last two fields, they have the $sign there, just those. I did not do hours in a currency format because that didn't make any sense. What's that? Well, that what that means is that you didn't put that blank space in here.
But the gross is also wrong too.
Well, then go and check and make sure that you put that calculation in. Gross equal hours times rate. I'm going to put in one more comment here that says display output. So I formatted it. Now I'm displaying it. All right. Make sure you saved. If yours doesn't work and you cannot figure out why it doesn't work, raise your hand and I'll walk over and I'll be happy to give you a hand. If yours worked, so Ethan says mine's done, fine. And take a break, and about 5 minutes after, we'll start up with the other one. Somebody said this yesterday, or it may have been the day before. Did everybody notice with the homework that you had for chapter 1, and I don't mean to demean what you did, but there wasn't a lot of thought involved. In other words, you didn't have to do any calculations. It was just basically you had to kind of mimic or parrot stuff that you were asked to do. Starting with chapter 2, you will now be asked, you'll be, for instance, for the Marshall's murals. It might say something like, each mural cost $10. Ask the user how many murals they want, and then give them their total cost. So if I say I want 5 murals and each mural is $10, my bill should be $50. Does that make sense? Because I will tell you on the test, on the hands-on test, you are asked, and it's t-shirts. And each t-shirt is $14.99. You ask the user how many would they want to buy, so I put 6. And you multiply 6 by $14.99, it gives you that's your subtotal. Then you've got 8% tax. So you take that subtotal and you multiply it by 0.08, that gives you your taxable total. Then you add together your taxable total and your subtotal, and you get the final total. You say, well, I won't remember all that. It's the same thing you do when you go to Walmart. It is. So imagine you went to Walmart and you bought 5 t-shirts and you reached $14.99.
Did you just say that was the test?
That is the test. That's the third problem of the test. Literally. So the first problem of the test basically asks you to input your name. So it's kind of like this. And then you print it out
Yeah.
like this. You know, you just write it all out. The second problem basically asks you to add together a bunch of numbers and get the average. You already told me yesterday you know how to do that. And if you weren't here, so I said, if 10 of you take the test, how do you figure out the average? And somebody said you add up the 10 numbers, and you divide by 10.
So you do like taxes and constant?
That's the second problem. The third problem is the one I just told you. That's the test. Why am I telling you that? Because I want every flaming one of you to get 100% on it. Because it's the easiest test that you're going to take. And no, they won't throw that one out. But I want to make sure if everybody has 100, then you're all starting from a happy place. All right? Anybody who didn't get theirs to work and doesn't understand why?
When I press start,
Okay.
that comes up.
Okay, then click no. And then it should give you whatever errors you have down here. Let's see. Okay. Now, it doesn't like this. Can you go back up a little bit on your screen? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, notice, first of all, make that L lowercase. You don't have to, but you just should. Okay? Okay, so then start scrolling down if you want. So then strength, that's good, that's good. Everything there looks fine. Okay, let's look at this, right? That looks good. Why is it doing that? That's a good question. Take your mouse and put it over where it says F name, if you want, please, right there. Right there. The next line, oh, there you go. Oh, you didn't put a semicolon at the end of the line before it. See that? And you didn't put one there. And you're consistent because you, yeah, so start adding those. And notice your errors are going away. Every time you're doing that, see that? It's a miracle. All right, so now let's see what one, so that looks like, now that's gotta be a little L again because we changed it, remember? Okay? That looks like you put a 1 there instead of an L. Hey, we all do this. Everybody does it. How many errors do you have? I don't see any. So I'd click your double disk icon to save, and I'd run it. And now you can make as much money as you want to make. So you put yourself in there. You know, you can put in that you work 1 hour and you make $1 million an hour. It's going to tell you made $1 million. Well, it's building the executable. Again, it's like you said, it might be because you've got an older machine. I don't know why it's doing that. Because I think it does that for everybody, but for everybody else, I think it does it so fast it just blips on and off.
That's fine.
Okay, it should come up here. There you go.
Okay.
So give it a try. If it still doesn't work, let me know. Anybody else? So get a break in, please. All right, it's about 8:56 and around. Geez, did that get tilted again?
Yeah.
Jeez. So we're gonna start up in about 10 more minutes. Man, oh man, that is not good.
So it's supposed to calculate something.
No, yeah, you gotta put numbers in. You gotta put a number in for hours, and you gotta put a number in for rate. Right? Okay, so you don't have anything to bring up. The good news is, it's not giving you an error, so you got something with some kind of a logical error. So let's take a look at what you got. String F name, string numbers, string, oh, that's all good. Right, that's good. Good. That looks good, that looks good. That looks good. Anybody else? Boy, oh boy. And here's a hard copy for everybody of the program we just did. I don't know why, for the bottom of it, I put console.writeline and console.readline. You don't have to. I don't know why I did.